Welcome, everyone. It is the XDI Experience Live Show. This week is all about innovation at the very highest level, sustainable, fast, and, well, just different ways of doing things, really. But before, let me explain the show to you. We're going to pull on our guest star any second now. We're going to have a little bit of a conversation. Please, during the course of that, feel free to ask any question you would like. We're going to kind of jump into that comment section, which is down below. You can jump in there and put in a few questions. We'll jump into those towards the end of the show. That is what we are doing. So please don't be shy. Get in there. We're dying to answer as many questions as you can ask. Let's get the show on the road. We are talking today to a proud dad, a great program manager, passionate community builder, and amazing award-winning innovator. And that's Brent Lessard of rLoop.
We want to take you on a journey to the future. A world where the smartest, most creative minds from all around the globe come together to tackle the biggest challenges on Earth, to imagine the impossible and change the world. That future is now. Born in response to a challenge to reimagine transportation, rLoop is a global network, including some of the brightest minds on the planet. And through the power of crowdsourced engineering, we have created levitating pods capable of incredible speeds. It's an amazing leap forward, made possible by a bold, new, globally connected way of working, by a shared desire to create a better future for mankind, and the imagination to believe that anything is possible. And we mean anything. Because if the collective imaginations of rLoop can combine to invent, design, and engineer a new future mode of transport and an entirely new way of working, just imagine what we might achieve next. Go on. We dare you. Tomorrow isn't going to wait for us. The world is changing right now, and we are driving that change. Join us. Help us make the impossible possible. And together, let's create the future we dream of.
Brent Lessard, welcome to the show. I got kind of goosebumps from that video. I do like that video. How are you, sir? I can't quite hear you. You've gone a little bit muted. You just need to take it off mute.
There we go. I'm well, Andrew. Thanks for having me today.
Pleasure. Hey, you are up in a very great part of the world. Fond memories of Toronto, Canada, with your eclectic mix of kind of Filipino quarter, Greek quarter, Indian quarter. You've got everybody kind of mashed in together, which is a great place for innovation, of course. So how's life up there as we come through COVID-19?
Yeah, I think all things considered, things are going very well. A lot of the cases of COVID have come down and seems to have stabilized, and we're moving into later phases of reopening. So I think we're also now enjoying our couple months of summer.
Yeah.
We always joke up here that we really have two seasons, winter and summer. And now that we are enjoying some warmer weather, I think people are happy to be able to enjoy larger social gatherings and open patios.
You bet. Everybody's being good. They're wearing their masks, being common sense, not being political.
I suspect that nowhere is free of the political nature of these masks, but I think generally everybody is adhering to the advice of our medical advisors.
Yep.
And in a lot of cities and regions now, it's actually mandatory to wear it in indoor public spaces.
Okay, makes sense. I get it. So, we've been talking long about the innovation that is being fostered during the COVID period, people coming up with new ideas. What kind of things have you've been seeing coming through as a result of COVID?
Yeah, it's been quite interesting, hasn't it? I think what was interesting for me to see was a lot of people in the kind of maker community and the designer community coming together.
Yeah.
To direct their efforts towards kind of pandemic mitigation efforts. So I was part of a group that was 3D printing face shields and masks for frontline workers. We've seen a lot of companies and startups as well direct their efforts towards medical devices like ventilators and however they could contribute. What's also been interesting to see is the accelerated adoption of technologies that enable kind of remote work and remote collaboration, like video conferencing and real-time communication platforms. Things that were kind of used within the kind of digital nomad community, starting to be adopted in the kind of traditional workspaces.
Yep. Anything new on that cell phone, or any new little apps that you've found that you're starting to get into over the last few weeks and months?
I don't think there's anything particularly new, although I'm sure there are lots of services that have come up to address different challenges or frictions that exist there.
Yep.
But we've just been using the same kind of platforms that we cut our teeth on over the past few years. But what we have noticed is, a beefing up of like security, as we saw with Zoom, or a bunch of features being updated or released to help enhance the situation. And also, actually, a lot of these companies have been making their kind of premium features available to individuals and to companies during the pandemic times for free. So it's been great to see them all kind of step up and contribute how they can.
You bet. Okay, let's get deep into what's going on today then. So we're going to be talking rLoop. We're going to be looking at new technology, transportation technology, and then we're going to finish off the show with a bit of an exploration over what we're doing together, XDI and rLoop and that future. So let's start with rLoop. Who is rLoop?
Sure. Well, rLoop as a community really started about 5 years ago, almost to the day, when Elon and SpaceX announced their Hyperloop competition.
Yeah.
And we were all kind of enthusiasts who met and discussed technology and hardware on a variety of different subreddits. And someone suggested that we form a team to enter that competition, and that's where it really kind of started. Initially there were just several dozen of us, but as we started to realize some success and achieve some results, the community grew and grew to hundreds of people from around the world coming together to collaborate and work in an entirely new kind of way.
So I have to ask, because I'm sure other people want to ask as well, which is, what was it like working with Elon? But let's be honest, I think you only get 5-minute increments or something. I think that's how he runs his day or something. But the back of that, I guess, what was it like working with his team as well?
Well, I think, there's myself very much with beard at that time.
Is that you? Second one?
That's me. In the red cap next to me is Steve Davis, the director of advanced projects at SpaceX. And then, of course, next to him is Elon. Yep. To say that we worked with him, I think would probably be a bit of a stretch.
Okay.
But we were fortunate to have several interactions with him, especially where that photo was taken was the first time that we were able to demonstrate the technology and the prototype that we had built to him.
Yeah.
So obviously, very focused, very passionate individuals, both Elon and the team. Everyone who was part of the competition from a kind of staffing perspective, they came from SpaceX or Tesla, but they were all volunteers. So they weren't kind of assigned to participate in the competition.
Yep.
It was on their own time that they were helping the teams as they went through. Initially it was, I think that first competition was 1.5 years from the time it was announced until the demonstration day. So just absolutely motivated and inspiring people.
Yeah.
Pleasure to work with.
Yeah, you bet. It's got to be. So then, what is the rLoop kind of Simon Sinek moment for the moment? What is the central why to rLoop?
Central why? Yeah, that's a good question. I think our collective why is a desire to really unlock humanity's potential by connecting people to collaborate in entirely new ways, and in particular to innovate in the built environment. So, we generally believe that the pace of software innovation has far outstripped that of hardware. And there's a kind of a quote that's attributed to Peter Thiel, at least, that says, we dreamed of flying cars and they gave us 140 characters, referring to Twitter. So what we wanted to do was bring people together to collaborate in new ways and direct their attention and efforts towards the built environment and hardware in particular.
Yeah. So what is the real kind of core differentiator for rLoop versus others, do you think?
Probably the greatest differentiator for rLoop was the decentralized and distributed way in which we organized and collaborated with virtually no hierarchy within the community.
Which is a way of working that many have been challenged with, of course, over the last few months. How do you maintain a speed of decision making, and how do you ensure that people take responsibility when they're dispersed?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think that actually, when you give people the confidence and the autonomy to act, what you will actually see is an increase in speed and efficiency. Rather than having to go to someone or up a chain for decisions to be made, they can make it at the team level, still in a kind of consensus manner, and they can act and move quicker with that confidence and with that autonomy. Yeah.
So I did a piece the other day related to what we were going to be talking about, and one of the things I put in there, and I'd love to get your views, which is I think these forces, you still need a leader. What are your thoughts around a leader in a dispersed and non-hierarchical team?
Yeah, I think what we did, what our approach at least was, or rather I should say what we observed, was that there were natural kind of merit-based social hierarchies that developed. Rather than imposing a top-down hierarchy, we wanted to give people the freedom to work in ways and on particular pieces that they wanted to. And when they were interacting, and the quality and the quantity of work that they were producing, a natural kind of social hierarchy develops. And it tends to largely be merit-based. And I feel that there is a lot more acceptance of that type of hierarchy. At least that's been what we observed within our community, rather than if we were imposing a kind of top-down hierarchy. So I think you're right generally to say that there are still kind of leaders and there are still kind of thought leaders. But that in our case, at least, they arose and developed naturally or organically, rather than being imposed.
So as you go through that innovation process, there will be times where you've got an expert who is probably the best leader for that moment, that then moves to another time when it could be another leader who has to step up because they're more experienced and they bring more value to the team, I guess.
Yeah, I hesitate to say expert because there's a quote I love, and I forget the individual's name now who said it, but he was the designer of the original Mini. But he said an expert is someone who tells you how you can't do something or why you can't do something. So there's certainly, subject matter experts that you want to bring in, but it also, I think, speaks to the benefits of bringing in a diverse group to work on something, that you get a different mindset to different challenges.
Good. Okay, so what was the big break? What was it that happened to rLoop that said, right, this is going to really move at scale now? What was that milestone?
So when we first formed, it was to enter the SpaceX Hyperloop competition. But before that actually took place, or before the first design milestone, we actually entered another competition that was hosted by Asite and the Dubai Future Foundation. It was a 48-hour competition to design stations, infrastructure, and routes to connect 3 different airports in the UAE. I believe it was focusing on Dubai.
Yeah.
And we had a team of about a dozen who worked over 48 hours to put our proposal together and submitted it. And we were shortlisted from, I think there were 70 or 80 teams. We were shortlisted to go to Dubai and present to the CEO of Dubai Future Foundation and the Crown Prince of Dubai. And we actually won 2nd place there. We won a Hyperloop Design for Excitement award. And that was really the kind of fuel that validated the work that we had done up to that point, where we didn't have that validation beforehand. And so that helped to attract more people to our community, but also, increase the interest of the people that we already had contributing within the community. And then, of course, we were the only non-student team to advance past the design stage of that first SpaceX Hyperloop competition. So that was a major milestone for us to achieve. And then the major challenge, of course, was the next phase was the build and demonstrate portion of the competition. And so I think one of our greatest achievements was actually translating the work that we've been doing digitally and virtually into a physical, tangible prototype and hardware that we could demonstrate. And when we did, we actually won an innovation award from SpaceX, which was one of only 5 awards that they gave out. And I think there were originally over 2,000 teams who had entered the contest. And so here was this group of strangers from the internet who had come together, had no prior working experience and no foundation to support us, competing against a lot of these big companies.
Yeah, yeah. I don't even recognize you in there.
I'm on the far right in the 2nd row. Here at that time.
Got it. Good. So what do you think you learned? I mean, obviously, to beat 2,000 others is astonishing. What do you think that you did so well? What was the main learning that you've now taken forward as a business?
Well, in the context of that competition, I think we took a holistic view of the vehicle. So rather than just focusing on the parameters of the competition and designing something to win the competition, we took rather a view that if this were to be deployed somewhere in the world, what do we have to consider for the system? So safety systems, human factors, all of these kinds of items. So we built a very complex and comprehensive prototype. And I think that having that kind of vision where you're focusing on, a full systems view really gave us a lot of perspective, as well as ingrained that kind of philosophy into our general approach. But also, I think, was the unique way that our community had come together as a virtual group. And then we're able to translate the work that we were doing virtually into a physical prototype.
Yeah.
I think that gave us a lot of recognition, and the processes that we went through and developed to facilitate that kind of collaboration was probably the biggest experience that we took out of that.
Yeah. You're very much focused on the end result holistically and reverse engineered back and took on the challenge, I understand. Interesting, whereas others were looking at it a little more narrowly, by the sounds of it.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that was recognized in the work that we did and the vehicle and the prototype and the hardware that we were able to demonstrate.
Not bad in such a short period of time, hey?
Yes.
Quickly touching on dispersed workforce collaboration, How important is it to you to have a real mix, diverse group of people in that innovation team?
I would say vital. I think we benefited greatly from bringing in a lot of diversity of opinions and viewpoints. You know, diversity in cultures, in education, in experiences, in social standing, and I think that that's vital to the innovation process, because if you're thinking about a system or some innovation that you intend to be used globally,
yep.
You know, different cultures adopt technology in different ways, and they interact with technologies in different ways. And if you don't have that perspective throughout the design and development process, yep. You're going to be wasting a lot of time and excluding a lot of people from benefiting from, you know, the technology that you're building. And so it was super important to us not only to bring in a lot of that diversity, but also not to emphasize that or make that you know, a point on its own. So in the kind of way that we collaborated online and virtually, yep. There was no understanding necessarily of what people's cultural background were, what their, you know, religious affiliation might be, or political affiliation, or what social standing they might have. And I think that that went a long way to you know, developing that holistic viewpoint on all of the technologies that we're developing.
Yeah, great. Absolutely. Yeah, the world is becoming a smaller place, and if we aren't considering a global product, a global service at all times, then we could be cutting ourselves short. Absolutely right. Good. Let's slide away from rLoop for a moment. Let's jump in, have a quick run at the new transport systems. You are generally at the front of new transportation systems, planes, trains, automobiles, etc., pipelines, waterways. What are you looking at in new transport these days that keeps you at the forefront? What are you considering?
Yeah, well, obviously there's a lot going on in the transportation space. Our initial and persisting focus has been on high-speed ground-based transportation, so the Hyperloop and variations on it. Of course, there's a lot of companies who are working on the full-scale Hyperloop vision.
Yeah.
But there's also several pursuing kind of variations of it. So there's a group out of Poland, for example, called Hyper Poland, and they're looking at using Hyperloop architecture, using traditional rail infrastructure. So looking to increase efficiencies and speed using that existing infrastructure. And of course, we're also looking at an intra-regional or intra-city version of the Hyperloop, continuing the work that was initially started by Brogan Van Brogen and the team at Arrivo, which was using the same kind of systems, but eliminating some of the complexities and targeting regional congestion. And so we've picked up the intellectual property and work product from Arrivo and are developing that further as well. The other area that we're kind of focused in is electric and vertical takeoff and landing flight. So we started this project called Our Flight that coincidentally was also spurred by a competition.
Yep.
And the vision is to make personal air flight efficient and viable using this vehicle that we call the R-Wing. Right now, we are using internal combustion engine, but we're looking at, you know, there's a lot of talented people and a lot of capital being deployed to make electric aviation feasible.
Yeah.
So our initial prototype, which we brought to Moffett Field at NASA in February to demonstrate, it does use an internal combustion engine, but we're always looking at ways to make it environmentally friendly and sustainable.
I think I'll be first in line for that one. When you've got the electric version going anyway. So that's...
Yeah, well, it's pretty interesting. We're calling it the motorcycle for the sky.
Yeah.
And I'm also very interested in testing, being a test pilot for it. But my wife said, we're not parking that in our driveway.
Okay. Yeah, I get that. Yeah. Okay, you're first, I'm second, then. That's fair enough. Good.
Fair.
Exciting. Let's look to the future now. Thanks for that. We're going to kind of look ahead for rLoop. Sufyan, good morning. How are you, sir? You hear us good?
Good morning. Good morning, Andrew. Good morning, Brent. And
welcome to the show.
Please sign me up for the flying motorcycle.
You are third in line, buddy. behind. So let's look ahead. Join us again in a second, Sufyan. Brent, let's just talk about rLoop in the future. What does that mean to you?
Sure. Well, the community's worked very hard to develop core technologies to unlock a lot of the systems and projects that we've been working on. So, we're looking for the right partners who will help us deploy that technology and advance those projects appropriately. But we're also, and I personally have been always super fascinated by, what motivates people to collaborate and contribute in these new kinds of ways, and exploring, how those motivations and passions translate into team cohesion and performance and collaboration. So we've been developing some new means to both open up the community to welcome more people into the innovation process, but also helping to understand why individuals come together to collaborate, how they collaborate, and how that contributes to the innovation process, not just for these kinds of distributed and decentralized organizations, but also how those learnings could be brought back into a traditional organizational hierarchy, so that we can unlock some really cool stuff.
Yeah, good. So, Sufyan, we've obviously come together, XDI, rLoop, in a bit of a partnership. Tell us about the idea and thinking behind that, if you would. Sufyan, you got us?
Delighted to be partner. Yes, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, struggling a little bit with connection, but keep on going.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I may have a little bit of an issue with my connection here, and if so, we can just move on. But I was just saying, we're really delighted to be partners with rLoop. Mm-hmm. A company that's been at the forefront of distributed product development, right? We now have to go and develop our product in a distributed manner. We have people all over the place. And really, rLoop was doing this way before COVID, not out of necessity, but just because that's kind of the business model they went with day one and been extremely successful with it. So, yeah, I mean, I always say the power of cloud and the power of crowd, right? Cloud and crowd coming together, bringing people from all over the world, a lot of smart people that want to contribute to a better planet for all of us. And they're coming together and working to bring some really cool technology to life. So very excited to be part of it.
And Brent, what does the partnership with XDI mean to you? What's it all about?
Yeah, well, as I said, I think, meaningful partnerships for us, especially with people who share a similar kind of vision and philosophy, go a long way to accelerate innovation. And as I mentioned before, one of the core tenets at rLoop was that together we're stronger than we are apart. So creating these kinds of meaningful partnerships are very important and integral to us. And it's been a pleasure to work with everyone at XDI over the past few months. And we're really looking forward to explore the ways that we can work together and leverage each other's strengths, so we can really empower communities as well as the innovation process.
Got it. And so what is next for rLoop and XDI, Brent?
Sure, for me, well, what we're looking at is as I kind of touched on before, was new ways that we can enable the crowd, that we can collaborate on these complex multidisciplinary projects and systems. And ultimately, we really want to build some cool stuff that people can interact with and that can create a positive impact. And so I think there's new opportunities that can become available when we welcome more people into that innovation process. And so we're creating a new kind of incentive framework in collaboration with XDI that we're hoping will be able to connect industry, the crowd, and these types of platforms to really enable and unlock some awesome innovation.
Great. So we've got some questions coming in, which I want to throw at you both, if I may. I think the first, just taking them in a bit of an order. Arbaz, thanks Arbaz for your question, appreciate that. Arbaz is asking, can anyone apply in this competition?
It depends what competition he's referring to. If I'm assuming it's the SpaceX Hyperloop competition, after the first two, they shifted to a focus on student teams only.
Okay.
So it does have to be a faculty-backed team from a school that is entering these competitions. We are working on a new type of incentive competition or challenge, which will be open to co-located and pre-formed teams. So if you have individuals that you want to bring together to contribute to solve some awesome challenges and win some cool rewards, you can do that. But also we are bringing in independent individuals. It will be open to anyone.
Great. So, I mean, in 2 weeks' time, we're going to be back again, guys, and we're going to be talking about this competition and what is going on from a innovation design engineering perspective. I'm so excited to kind of bring that back again. Arbaz, join us in 2 weeks' time for sure, and we'll tell you even more about it. Next question. I'm going to throw this one at you, Sufyan. Why do you think startups often outsmart the bigger enterprises?
No, that's a great question. I think startups and successful startups master doing more and much more with less. Case in point, rLoop, to bring together a team of 140 people to design Hyperloop. Traditional startups would probably have to raise a minimum of $100 million just to get started, right? But you have these very smart people that take an out-of-the-box thinking and get together and build something like like what they did for SpaceX. So I think the art of doing a lot more, art of building efficiencies and out-of-box thinking is probably why startups, in my opinion, that are able to move a lot faster than the bigger enterprises that are burdened by processes and existing culture, etc.
Very happy to make mistakes and learn by them rather than worry for your job necessarily, etc. Those kind of cultural differences, I guess. Got it.
Yeah.
Another question we got here for you, Brent, which is, what makes a great design team?
Oh, that's a good question. I think for us in our experience, what you really need to do is identify the real passions on an individual level and bring together a team that have a diversity of those passions, but who are motivated and have the ultimate vision at the forefront of mind. So our experience had largely been that the greatest contributors amongst our teams not only had an education or experience that was relevant. Actually, in many cases, they were stepping outside of what their traditional kind of education or experience would suggest that where they should be contributing, and rather had a passion and a want and a desire to contribute to something like audacious and meaningful So I think, that is something that you can't necessarily train people on. So having that kind of passion and vision and direction really will take you a long way.
You bet. Very good. Last couple. Warren McRae is asking, can you show some images of the prototype or the finished product? Probably not right this second. I'm sure you haven't got them waiting there for us. But maybe that's something we could show. Have you got something like that, Brent?
Yeah, there's a few. So we built 2 prototypes. They were about 1/5 scale. So they were about 11 to 12 feet long, and they stood about 5 feet tall.
Yeah.
They weighed around 1,200 pounds, fully loaded. And we actually demonstrated some of the features at Autodesk University. There's an image right there. I think that was in 2018. So that was a crowd of 10,000 people that came through. And we demonstrated levitating and moving, translating forwards and backwards down that track that you see it on. I think it was 30 times per day. So as I mentioned, it was 1,200 pounds, and it had wheels for when the magnetic levitation engines weren't engaged. Mm-hmm. And you had to get a couple people, really leaning into it to push it along those wheels. Yeah. But when we levitated it, a single person could push it with a single finger backwards and forwards down that track. This was at the National Society of Black Engineers conference. Yeah. And you can just see, this was a stationary exhibit, but you could see inside the vehicle and see the, cable management wasn't our strength. You could get somewhat of a view inside the pod, and that was an electrics tray that we called it. So that would slide in and out of the vehicle. Right. And we could work on it between sessions. Excellent. You can see an Autodesk promo video on our YouTube channel as well. Okay, good. Thanks, Brent. Okay, final question. I got to ask Sufyan, I got to ask you, which platform is good for design, SolidWorks or Fusion 360? And I'm going to put an or on the end of
that. Thanks for putting me on the spot. But yes, I think, so we at XDI, we represent the Dassault systems. So with the Dassault system, we represent the 3D experience on the cloud, CATIA, SolidWorks. So we'd obviously be biased, in a biased way, say you want to probably do CATIA, what you're also designing. So if you're designing an airplane, that's probably something that's only good with a big CAD like CATIA. If you have a lot of assemblies and parts, if you're designing a small gadget, then maybe any CAD can do that. But really, I think the whole point is being on a platform, being in context, and designing in basically in the built environment, like I said earlier. Yep. I think that's the most important thing. It's not so much what you use, but the methodology of how you as a team come together to build whatever you're building as a product in the environment and really gain those efficiencies. Right. But yes, if I have to pick one, I would say 3D experience on the cloud. And we're happy, obviously, that rLoop is using that today. So, but obviously we're biased, but I'll leave it at that.
No, that was a great answer. And thankfully, Ray Anderson agreed. He said 3D experience is his favorite. So thank you, Ray. Appreciate it. Gentlemen, thanks so much. Everyone, that is it. Please keep asking questions, and we will keep answering them. Next week, we are going to be talking all things electric, be that a milk float or a tractor or a forklift, or frankly, anything that moves. We're going to be talking with Evo Electric. And in 2 weeks' time, we're going to be back again. We're going to be talking about this whole kind of crowdsourced engineering competition. Excited to see you again, Brent. Then, Sufyan, Brent, thanks so much for being on the show and taking time. And thank you, everyone, for watching.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.